Our faith has the capacity to sustain us, heal us, reinvigorate us, open up the awareness of a greater power, and to provide us with a community within our church, synagogue, or mosque. But many people with disabilities and their families do not feel welcomed into a faith community. There are many reasons for individuals with disabilities and their families not necessarily feeling welcomed. But one's spiritual life is a large part of one's identity, and when people with disabilities do not feel welcomed into a faith community, something is deeply lost for them. Families with children with disabilities often feel unwelcomed by the looks they get in the pews, or the comments made about their children making noise or movements that they cannot control. These families often report feeling isolated or shunned by others at church. Many families decide it is not worth attending anymore, which can lead to even more of an isolated feeling. Families are often unable to fully participate in the fellowship life of the church because of the care that their child with special needs may require. An inclusive faith community commits to sharing one another's joys and challenges. Included members love, respect, and treasure each other, nurture and support one another on a journey through faith, and use their gifts and graces in ministry. This commitment does not change with the experience of a disability. But being included means more than just being in a community. It means being a full participant with the community, in all aspects of the community, from physical space to attitudes. A community where all are welcome is barrier-free, accessible, accepting, and engaging. A truly welcoming faith community is one that is open to making accommodation, communication, and developing strategies to build a community where all members can grow and flourish. It is a community that looks at the needs of the full family and ministers to those needs. It is a community where everyone is able and encouraged to share their gifts and to contribute to the community as a full partner, whether they or their loved ones have a disability or not. An inclusive faith community is one where all are welcomed. This project, All Are Welcome, works to develop resources to help faith communities to become inclusive and welcoming. It is funded by a grant through the South Carolina Developmental Disabilities Council. This program is broken down into several sections. You may proceed through the program in order, or at any time you can come back to this contents page and select a different section to view. All Are Welcome is a program to develop resources to help faith communities to become more inclusive and welcoming to those with disabilities. It is funded by a grant through the South Carolina Developmental Disabilities Council. This program represents Year 1 of the grant, where we developed a training program for places of worship. In Year 2, we will develop similar materials for parents and caregivers to assist in the implementation of inclusion at their place of worship. Finally, in Year 3, we will develop a training program for use in seminaries to use with their pastors and worship leaders in training. According to the 2000 census, 19.3% of Americans had a long-lasting condition or disability. The rate was 22.2% in South Carolina. The Centers for Disease Control reported in the Journal of Pediatrics in 2011 that 1 in 6 children had a developmental disability, including attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, intellectual disability, cerebral palsy, autism, seizures, stuttering or stammering, moderate to profound hearing loss, blindness, learning disorders, and/or other developmental delays. This represented an increase of 17.1% over 12 years. About 90% of special needs families are unchurched, and a big obstacle is lack of acceptance. Just like the typical population, people with disabilities need to be involved in worship. They need to be involved in various activities through the place of worship, including social, sports, service, and any other activities. Individuals with disabilities should be serving during worship, including serving in leadership roles. They should be participating in all sacraments and other rites of passage. And they should be using their own individual gifts to serve God. As you get started, please remember the following important points. Don't worry about the numbers. Whether you serve one person with a disability or you serve 50, each is important. Measuring success is not through numbers. Disability ministry is not a revenue source. It may not be cost effective. It's about reaching those affected by disabilities, not money. Unlike most other ministries, this will be long term. Most people do not outgrow disabilities, and thus they may not move on from this need, unlike those who may participate in a grief, a divorce, or an unemployment ministry. The need for ministry may begin before the child is born, if prenatal tests suggest that the child may have a disability, and it can extend through end of life. It may take a while to lay the foundation for this ministry, and the services may change as the needs change. But most importantly, remember that if we cannot include individuals with disabilities in our places of worship, where will they be included? In September 2010, the All Are Welcome Steering Committee conducted an online survey of those affected by disabilities. Several cooperating organizations distributed the survey through email and posted it on their websites. A total of 86 responses were received, and the full results are available by clicking the link on this page. We asked, if you do not participate in a faith community, please describe your reasons. Just a lot to get 5 kids ready, and one of my daughters tantrums and rolls on the floor, and sometimes I don't want her to do that in public. I have a great concern that the people working in the Sunday school classes are not equipped to handle my son. We have not found a church that understands our child. I have concerns about my son who has autism. My son makes too much noise. Most people do not understand autism or how to deal with the child at any age or the level of ability the child has. If a child is not normal, then they do not know how to make them fit in. It would be nice if they would just accept the child and learn. Our son does not like loud music and often cannot sit through the entire service. I have behavioral issues of a child with ASD. A Place for All is a documentary about faith inclusion for individuals with disabilities. Please watch this short clip for some insight on disabilities from leaders of the Christian, Jewish, and Muslim faiths. There are 3 major barriers to inclusion: accessibility, programmatic, and attitudinal. First and foremost, individuals with disabilities need to be able to physically get to the place of worship. Some may require transportation assistance, accessible parking, and alternatives to stairs, such as ramps or elevators. Once they are at their place of worship, they may need alternative seating, such as spaces for wheelchairs and accessible restrooms. Although most businesses have improved accessibility in light of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the equal access provisions of that act do not apply to places of worship operated by religious organizations. The federal court stated this allows them to, quote, design their facilities and perform their services in accordance with their religious tenets, end quote. Therefore, places of worship are not required to remove barriers to access and still may be inaccessible to individuals with disabilities. But how can those with mobility challenges attend worship services if they cannot access the facilities? Johnny and Friends has developed a wonderful checklist to evaluate how accessible your place of worship is to individuals with disabilities. You may click on the link for more information. The second set of barriers to inclusion are programmatic. These are often related to an individual's communication or learning disability. The following items may be of assistance based on individual and congregational need: assisted listening devices, sign language interpretation, large print, or Braille. Another programmatic challenge may be when classes or worship are in inaccessible locations or formats. For example, an outdoor scavenger hunt might be quite fun for a typical child, but may be impossible for an individual with mobility issues. Finally, information may not be available in different formats for different learning styles. Perhaps the biggest barrier faced by many individuals with disabilities is attitudinal. Many have experienced challenges such as avoidance, fear, stereotyping, discrimination, insensitivity, discomfort. People with disabilities should be welcome to worship. One way of communicating this is by posting an accessibility logo in the parking lot or on the church door. People with disabilities should be included on congregational committees or in leadership roles. People with disabilities should be encouraged to participate in the life of the church. For example, to attend social events, participate in service projects, and be involved in small groups. From our survey that we discussed earlier, The biggest barriers to inclusion are perceived as fear, understanding, compassion, judgment, comfort, accessibility, awareness, acceptance, unwelcome, education or knowledge, ignorance. McLean Bible Church in Vienna, Virginia has one of the largest and most well-respected disabilities ministries in the country. Here is their message to pastors on the importance of including individuals with disabilities in the life of their place of worship. Now we will discuss the different types of inclusion. Full inclusion is welcoming individuals into all programs, regardless of disability type, where they participate side by side with typical peers. Some of the benefits of full inclusion include an increased awareness and sensitivity to those with disabilities, friendships between special needs and typical individuals modeling appropriate social skills. Full inclusion does come with potential challenges. Depending on the individuals involved, additional classroom supports and staffing may be required. Programmatic design changes may be needed for a wide range of cognitive abilities. Existing staff and volunteers may need additional training. In partial inclusion, the individual with a disability is included in a portion of the program and the remainder of the time in a more specialized setting. For example, they may participate in a regular small group program but need a different setting during the worship service. Some of the benefits of partial inclusion are that it allows for some flexibility for individual to be able to attend what they can, but have other options when they cannot. They will have the benefit of some interaction with typical peers, including the modeling of appropriate social skills, and needed additional supports may be more available in specialized classrooms. With partial inclusion, there can be some transitional issues, such as adjusting to the different environments. There may also be possible disruption in program flow. Finally, we have the specialized or self-contained classrooms. These are special programs or classrooms for persons with disabilities. Typically, they are smaller class sizes, higher staff-to-student ratios, and taught by professionals such as special educators. These classes are more suited to those with severe medical or behavioral needs that cannot be met in a traditional setting. For those individuals who require specialized or individualized support, it may be available in a self-contained classroom. A faith program can still be presented with program and materials adapted to cognitive ability of students. In a self-contained classroom, however, the individual gets very little interaction with their typical peers. As much as possible, individuals with disabilities should be interacting with their peers in either an inclusion or partial inclusion environment. Click on the link to hear McLean Bible Church's Top 10 list to start a disability ministry. You've decided to start a disability ministry. What do you do now? First, find out what the need is. Each ministry will be different based upon the needs of the individuals within that place of worship. How many individuals with special needs are there in the congregation? How many unreached individuals with special needs are there in the local community? Talk directly to individuals with disabilities. What are their needs? Do they need physical access to the facilities? Sign language interpretation? Modifications of the curriculum? Understanding and acceptance. Talk to the parents of children with special needs. What are the needs of the children? What are the needs of the family? Do they need respite, support? What do the siblings need? Finally, develop a list of people in your place of worship that have specialized experience, such as special educators, occupational therapists, speech therapists, and medical professionals. Would they be willing to help out, either directly or in an advisory capacity? To help answer some of these questions, a congregational survey may be helpful. For a sample survey developed by Johnny and Friends, please click on the link provided. It is important to educate both your leadership and congregation about your proposed disability ministry so that you will have their full support. Meet with leadership, clergy, elders, children's and adult ministry directors, and share the vision. Let them know what you want to accomplish, and as much as possible, what is required. Allow individuals and families to share their stories if they are comfortable. Many people don't fully understand the challenges that some families affected by disabilities have faced in trying to find a welcoming faith community. Include stories about disabilities and inclusion in any publications, such as the newsletter, website, and bulletin. What is often most helpful, though, is if someone can speak from the pulpit. Share their story or share why it is important to be inclusive of individuals with disabilities. This will go a long way towards increasing congregational awareness and understanding. What are some ways to help your congregation be more welcoming and inclusive of those with disabilities? Many faiths and places of worship hold an annual Special Needs Sunday or Special Needs Sabbath. What does this look like? Provide information on disabilities through display boards and bulletin inserts. Highlight disability services provided at your place of worship. Speak from the pulpit about how your religion or denomination sees individuals with disabilities. Share stories from families and those affected by disabilities. You can further expand congregational awareness by using your publications, website, and social media outlets. Include articles about disabilities and stories of how you include those with disabilities. Post pictures of individuals with disabilities with their permission, participating in worship, small groups, or other programs. Have brochures available about disabilities and inclusion at your place of worship. Now that you know what to do and your place of worship is on board, you need volunteers to help with the program. The following groups are great resources for volunteers: high school students, college students, grandparents or seniors, small group members, community service groups, siblings of those with disabilities, anyone who is willing to be trained. One church's successful disability ministry made up shirts to help recruit volunteers. On the front it said, "Are you breathing?" And on the back it said, "Then we need you." Almost anyone can work in disability ministries. If their heart is there, the rest will follow. As with any group of volunteers, training is necessary. We will discuss both formal and informal training. Formal training will vary depending on the specific need, but may include standard volunteer training that your place of worship uses for all volunteers, safety, security, and abuse prevention, CPR, first aid, and any other needed medical training, disabilities awareness and techniques, including person-first language, and finally, the curriculum you plan to use. Often it is helpful to develop a volunteer job description so that the volunteer understands what is expected of them. To help with this training, ask the special needs professionals, either from your congregation or the greater community, to train your volunteers and serve on an advisory committee. Informal training is more ongoing, but there are several important areas to include. Meeting with the parents or caregivers to discuss the individual's specific needs and challenges. What techniques work at home? What supports or resources could be helpful to the volunteers? Reviewing medical needs, medications, emergency procedures, and allergies. In the case of an emergency, you need to be able to provide this information to emergency personnel. Review of Individualized Education Plan, or IEP. This is a plan created between the school, professionals, and parents to set goals for the year. It can be helpful in understanding some of the individual's needs. Click on the link for some sample forms to record the information obtained in these discussions. Many individuals with disabilities can be successful participants in your regular religious education classes with some minor modifications and accommodations. Simple classroom strategies can be helpful based on individual need. Some examples include: post the names of students with a picture, if possible, to help encourage getting to know each other. Post a schedule for the day so that everyone knows what to expect and when. Include pictures to help those who are more visual learners or who cannot read. Consider a seating chart so that students will know where their place in the room is each week. Keep supplies in a central location for consistency. Provide a quiet space for escaping the group if needed, perhaps a reading corner or a separate area of the classroom. Some places of worship provide a separate staffed quiet room. Post classroom rules or expectations. Provide fidget toys or other sensory integration activities that may help relieve stress or keep students on task. Sometimes an individual may have difficulty with an activity or lesson. The following modifications and accommodations may be helpful based on individual need. Can they do the same lesson with adapted expectations, such as fewer problems to answer, a word list to choose from, or multiple choice answers? Can they do the same lesson with adapted materials? Do they need larger print? Can they cut and paste answers instead of writing? Can they do a similar activity? If others are writing answers, can they give answers orally? Can they do a different activity, such as doing a puzzle related to the lesson rather than answering questions? Can they work in another part of the room? They may need to be away from distractions. An inclusion strategy often used with success is the use of a buddy. A buddy or a shadow is an adult or responsible teen that comes alongside of a person with a special need. They are like a friend who provides assistance depending on the individual need. The following are guidelines when setting up a buddy system. Volunteers should be good at working with children, young adults, or whatever the stage to which the individual with the disability belongs. They should have an interest in special needs and be flexible. It is helpful to provide a job description so that they understand the extent and limits of their responsibilities. If possible, assign the same buddy each week for consistency. Make sure that the buddy understands the individual's specific needs. Wherever possible, keep individuals with special needs in their age-appropriate classes, adapting the materials to suit their needs and abilities. Make sure that the staff and other volunteers are aware of the child's needs and understand the role of the buddy. Always keep an open door policy and/or work in teams of 2 volunteers, especially when addressing personal hygiene needs. No volunteer should ever be behind closed doors alone with any participant. Note that not all individuals with a disability will need a buddy. Some may be able to participate with only a little additional support from a group leader. For more information about buddies and a sample buddy job description, click the link on this page. Please note that different age groups may have different needs. Parents of children with special needs may want their children fully included in typical classes. They want their children side by side with their typical peers, with access to the same information and resources. Adults with disabilities may want separate groups with others with disabilities, such as a circle of friends, but some may also want to be fully included. Some populations enjoy disability-specific groups, such as a deaf ministry. There are no concrete guidelines in this area. Communication with those involved is the key to ensuring that their needs and desires are met. We've talked a lot about inclusion in religious education, and now we will talk about inclusion in actual worship services. For individuals with some disabilities, the amount of sensory stimulation in a worship service can be overwhelming. Based on congregational need, consider limiting the amount of sensory stimulation or providing notice when it will be used. Some specific areas of concern may include incense, changes in the usual music, lighting effects, and temperature fluctuations. Many places of worship have designed crying rooms for parents with small children into their facilities. These are small enclosed rooms at the rear of the worship area with windows and sound so that parents can participate in worship while tending to their children. These rooms can be great resources to those affected by disabilities that make it difficult to stay quiet or still. They and their families can still attend worship without disrupting the rest of the congregation. Sometimes all that is needed is something to help an individual keep focused and occupied during a worship service. Many places of worship provide pew bags with quiet activities for children. It is helpful to include sensory toys for those who fidget. If a crying room is not available, consider providing some other quiet room as a place where one can go for a short break from the worship service. Some individuals just need a short break from the sensory stimulation, and then they can be back to the worship service. Be sure to allow service dogs to accompany their owners. Perhaps most importantly, always respond appropriately and supportively when an individual with a disability acts in a way that may otherwise seem inappropriate. An excellent example comes from a church in California. A mother brought her son with a disability to the church for the first time. As the congregation sat, as the preacher spoke, her son became more and more agitated, making movements and noises. The preacher stopped his sermon. He said that he felt that there were many in the church that day in need of prayer, and asked if everyone could stand and pray with him. As he prayed, the ushers were able to come tend to the woman and her son, getting them the assistance they needed. At the same time, the congregation was standing and praying, focused on something other than the son's disruption. They took what could have been an embarrassing experience for the mother and instead provided her with love and support. All individuals have gifts and talents, including those with disabilities. To be fully inclusive means that individuals with disabilities have the same opportunities to serve as their typical peers. The following are just a few examples of areas where individuals with disabilities have been successful serving in their place of worship. Greeters, lectors or readers, acolytes, ushers, Eucharistic ministers serving the communion, teachers, assistants, buddies, or shadows, music, leadership, missions, and everywhere where there are opportunities to serve. Always keep communication open with other ministry leaders to help find opportunities for service. Seek out the gifts and talents of those with disabilities, just as you would any other member of your congregation, and ensure that they are shared with your fellow ministry leaders. Up to this point, we have focused on including the individual with the disability. It is important to remember, however, that disabilities affect the entire family. In this section, we will discuss how your place of worship may minister to the needs of other family members. When a family member has a disability, the whole family is affected, whether it is the parents or siblings or other caregivers. How can we minister to the needs of that family? To hear a story of how inclusion has helped a family at Grace Church, Greenville, South Carolina, click on the link provided. Parents and caregivers of individuals with disabilities often feel very isolated. They are often holding jobs just like their fellow parents, raising their other children, and dealing with the increased time, emotional, and financial pressures of the disability. The first thing you can do is offer to visit, to listen and pray with them and begin to understand their situation. A little understanding can go a long way. Offer to bring them food once a week, once a month, or whatever their need may be. Be sure to ask about any allergies. Offer to spend time with the person they are caring for so that they can have a break. Offer to meet them at church and go to Sunday school with their child, or shadow their special needs child to youth group. Keep in touch. Even if they have not been to your place of worship in a while, still keep in touch. There may be circumstances that are keeping them away. Email or call the person and let them know about church or community events that might be of interest to them. Send the caregiver or the person they are caring for birthday cards. Get your children to know these people as well. Disabled children love typical peers, and elderly love children as well. Provide small group opportunities for parents and caregivers where they can share and receive support from others in similar situations. Couples with a child with a disability are subject to increased stressors and demands. Studies indicate that these couples have a decreased level of marital satisfaction. When asked what would help, respite is the number one need identified by family caregivers, no matter what the disability or age of the person needing care. These couples need the opportunity to get out and participate in normal activities as their peers, but they often do not have someone they feel can watch their loved one. We will talk more about respite shortly. Siblings have unique needs because of their relationship with an individual with a disability. They need breaks from their role just as their parents do. Encourage them to participate in age-appropriate groups and activities, such as a youth group. They may need extra assistance to attend, perhaps a ride to and from the activity. Offer to babysit siblings during doctor appointments. Siblings who are not old enough to stay home on their own often have to go along to many doctor appointments. Provide them an alternative to sitting in a waiting room could be the fun break that they need. Sometimes the siblings just need to talk. Be available to listen to their concerns and needs. One successful program for supporting siblings of individuals with disabilities is the SIB Shop model. SIB shops are opportunities for brothers and sisters of children with disabilities to obtain peer support and education within a social, spiritual, or recreational context. It is done in a relaxed setting, providing brothers and sisters with opportunities to discuss common joys and concerns with other siblings of children with special needs. Siblings have the opportunity to learn how others handle situations commonly experienced by siblings of children with special needs, and to learn more about the implications of their siblings' special needs. In addition, SIB shops provide parents and other professionals with opportunities to learn more about the concerns and opportunities frequently experienced by brothers and sisters of people with special needs. Respite is the number one need identified by family caregivers, no matter what the disability or age of the person needing care. It is the opportunity for parents or caregivers to have some time away from their caregiving responsibilities. Respite can be as simple as an evening program during which parents can go out, or as complex as a residential program during which caregivers can have a lengthier break. A workshop on respite was held at the 2011 Family Connection of South Carolina Conference. Click on the link to view the workshop, Making Respite Work in the Faith Community. Understanding the specific disability will help you better serve the individual. Most disabilities have specific characteristics that it is important to know about. Note, however, that two individuals with the same diagnosis may present very differently. FAQ sheets about different disabilities are available through the National Dissemination Center for Children with Disabilities at the first link on your screen. The 2011 South Carolina Respite Coalition Conference had a workshop on faith inclusion. This workshop included wonderful disability information. To view this workshop, how to include children and adults with special needs in faith community activities, click on the link provided. It is important to know appropriate ways to approach and talk to individuals with disabilities. First, always use person-first language. This means the individual comes first and the attribute comes second. Don't say special needs child, say child with special needs. Don't say autistic child, do say child with autism. Don't say Down's kid, Down syndrome child, say child with Down syndrome. Don't say disabled person, say person with a disability or differently abled. Don't say mental retardation or mentally retarded. Do say person with an intellectual disability. Speak directly to the person with the disability, not to an interpreter or caregiver, even if the individual has limited communication skills. Speak to them just as you would speak to their typical peers, and never assume that they have an intellectual disability. Do not force an individual to look you in the eye. Some neurological disorders, like autism, may make an individual uncomfortable with eye contact. You should extend or refrain from physical touch and hugs the same as you would to a person who is the same age and without a disability, but also understand that the person with a disability may or may not be receptive to touch. Ask before offering assistance. And again, always use person-first language. A few other things to keep in mind. Say person with a disability rather than handicapped. The term handicapped has its origins in cap in hand, with implications of charity and begging. Remember that we are talking about people. The term the disabled is impersonal and implies a group separate from the rest of society. Avoid attaching labels to people with disabilities. They are people, not defined by their disability. Don't use negative images such as suffering from, a victim of, crippled by, or afflicted by. Rather, say, a person with a condition. The links on this page provide information on existing inclusion programs that may be of interest. Please visit them for some great ideas on how you can make your place of worship more inclusive. At the 2011 Family Connection of South Carolina Conference, 2 workshops were held on faith inclusion. Click the links provided to view these workshops. Building a Special Needs Ministry in a Faith Community, the vision, and Building a Special Needs Ministry in a Faith Community, the methods. These workshops discuss disability ministries at Emmanuel Baptist Church, Hartsville, South Carolina, Cedar Creek Church, Aiken, South Carolina, and First Baptist Church, Georgetown, South Carolina. The following pages include resources we have come across during the first year of this grant. We welcome your additions to our online resource list. Please email any resources to Susan Leiby at susanl@scautism.org. Thank you. A special thank you to the All Are Welcome Steering Committee that has met and contributed so much to this project. Thank you for your interest in providing inclusive opportunities for individuals with disabilities in your place of worship. We hope that the All Are Welcome program and the resources provided have helped you in this process. For more information on the All Are Welcome grant, please contact Susan Leiby of the South Carolina Autism Society at susanl@scautism.org or 864-241-8669.